Welcome back to Nick Lenz Comic Corner, Classic Lesser Known Classics. This is episode number 2772 and episode number 2666. I got two DC trades. This one, as far as I can tell, was the last of these books released. I do not know why they've not released more of these ones. I mean, this would be good idea to do printing of the series, but nope, we decided to stop with this particular book for some reason. So, basically, this book and the book have something common. Both founding members of the Justice Society of America. First up we have is Sandman Mystery Theater Book 2. This collects issues 13-24 and the series' only ever annual ever release. Written by Matt Wagner and Steven Stiegel. Artwork is done by Guy Davis, Vince Lucky, David Lloyd, John Bolton, Stefan Carrillo, George Pratt, Alex Ross, yes, Peter Sauser, and Dean Olsen. The first cover is done by Gab Wilson and Richard Burning. I'm not going to be discussing issues 21-24 because I discussed already in the trade. They collect those issues already. So, the very first story in here is a story I have mentioned once before. First, we're talking about The Vamp from issues 13 and 16. Yes, this is the story where it features a lesbian vampire. Yep, they have this as the third story arc. We have a lesbian storyline in this book, and there's also a little bit of sexual stuff with Diane and another woman who basically really wants to sleep with her. Despite the fact she's dating Wesley Dodds in this book. Yeah, and then of course, like, the whole thing is basically, it's like she's a vampire, and it's like, the best way to describe this story here is how do I explain this? It's like Matt Wagner wanted to explore a possibility of, what if basically Wesley fought a lesbian in a story arc who turned out to be a vampire? Yes, because that probably was a craze. It's an interesting idea, and there's a weird idea for the very next story arc. Oh gosh. Oh yeah, and there's a little bit of nudity in here. Because it's Vertigo, of course there's nudity. Though for some reason the nipples are basically shaped like hearts. I don't know why. It's just how the thing is drawn. So, by the end of it, basically the vampire is caught. And like all the villains in the series, they never pop up ever again. It's a very interesting story per se. I don't mind the lesbian aspect for it. It's perfectly fine. So I consider this. I love the artwork. I'm going to give the story here roughly a 8.5 out of 10. The next story is called Scorpion. By the way, this story also features the first time I could think of at this point where she attempts to have sex with Wesley, and then of course has to stop because she may have discovered his wound on him. Yeah. And also, like, they do deal with the lesbian vampire. Is she arrested? No, she just dies. Yes. Now, the Scorpion story arc, it basically was a lot of poisoning. There's also this weird moment in the book where, for some reason, we have a homosexual moment. Where two guys are doing it in the book. Dealt behind a panel mostly, but it's like, okay, we dealt with a lesbian villain in the previous story, so now we do a gay villain. Yes, my guess is Matt Wagner just really want to get this in the system so badly, so let's do it for two straight story arcs. Though, at least in the case of this one, this is a minor thing about the villain. We have people die in the story arc, like where it's these chunky guys. And it's implied this story deals with domestic abuse. And for some reason, the guy who dies here, it's like he gets more chubby, and then he just collapses and dies. And there's also a bit of domestic abuse in here. And that's kind of also a minor thing in here as well. And the Scorpion is simply a guy who basically is like a guy with a whip. Yes. When I saw this guy, the first thing that came to mind is, well, the whole idea of a guy who kills men like this. It reminds me of a villain from CSI, where he did the same thing too. And what he did in the show is that he forced men to, like, basically he made the murders look kind of like suicide. Like one where he ends up in a bathtub in this middle of this warehouse. Yes. As for why he killed men, and he was a recurring villain in CSI. The whole story of him got wrapped up after a few seasons. And his last appearance, he basically got some plastic surgery where he became a judge. Though, get this, previously he was a girl. Then who had a transgender surgery to make herself a guy. It's weird, but it's late night television. So, the vamp thing I thought was interesting. This story here is just, I would say, out of all the story arcs for Sam Mr. Hugh, this is probably one of our weaker story arcs of this whole series. That's that kind of felt like to me. Even though it's quick, 4 parts, the best thing about this arc is the artwork. It's just that the arc feels very weak. Oh yeah, and the story is wrapped up in a nice little bow by the end of the story arc. And then comes the only annual release of the book. By the way, that's the cover for the annual. Here's another fun fact about this annual. Not only was this the only ever annual released, prior to this trade coming out, this annual, for some reason, DC skipped this annual. Excuse me. I don't know why. Is it bad? No. It's a multi-story annual. Yes. There are 9 chapters in the book. In this annual, you have the eyewitness, the butler, the stakeout, the body, the cop, the DA. This is the one by Alex Ross. The mugger, the bystanders, and the solution. One of the things I love about Sam Mr. is the font for the artwork. It's done in a noir movie style. I love the font for this thing. And my guess is the reason why that Matt Wagner did this annual, like, is this annual bad? No, it's actually probably the best thing released in this book aside from the next story arc. I think it's Our Man, if I'm not mistaken. Let me take a look here. I'll take a look in a minute. So the first thing is basically, it's like a series of stuff Wesley gets involved with. That's kind of what this whole annual is. It's done as basically a detective style story. Think of all of it, but I thought the annual was a lot of fun. Probably by far better than the actual, like, the first 2 stories in here. Oh, and is the third story the Our Man? No, it's Dr. Death. Yep. So with this particular book here, I have now discussed issues 13 and 20 and the annual. I'm gonna give the book roughly an 8.5 out of 10. The 2 stories featured in here, I think Vamp was interesting, though it had an okay ending, and the whole idea of this was really interesting at the time. Now, if you publish this nowadays, it'd be like, yeah, we can publish this no problem because no one gives a damn about oh yeah. Now here's the thing: is the woman portrayed as pure evil just because she's a lesbian? No, that has nothing to do with it. You have to read the story and understand why she's evil because she's just a bad person. She's not bad because she's a lesbian. Some might point to that as possibly the reason why he's evil. Like, oh, Matt Wagner wrote this woman who's a lesbian to be evil because she's a lesbian. that is part of the character. That is not her defining trait. Yeah, basically she sleeps with women, like 2 women over the course of 4 issues, and she attempts to kiss Diane, Wesley Dodds' girlfriend in the book, but it doesn't go anywhere. Like, do we see in the book, do we see a graphic depiction of 2 women having sex in the story arc? Not really. We do see some nudity. Yes, because it's Vertigo. But I don't find anything wrong with showing some nudity in the book like this. It's Vertigo. Vertigo can perfectly allow this, no problem. But in the case of mainstream, they may not get away with this per se. Yeah, and plus and if you're curious, does the guys get same type of treatment where, like, oh, we see a guy's end? Yes, except it's a chubby guys are in. Yeah, I thought the Scorpion Stork was probably by far of the Storks I've reviewed for this series, probably the weakest out of this whole thing. Alright, next up is a really, really good book. Next up we have is The Spectre, Volume 1, Crimes and Judgments. Done by the awesome creative team of John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake. I believe this is actually one of 3 books these two ever worked on together. They worked on this, Martian Manhunter, and that story for Batman, which was John's only story work on Batman, and Tom Mandrake's his final story arc. Now, this run for Spectre, it is, out of the 5 volumes released for Spectre, this is the longest, at 62 issues. Now, of course, this book later on does debut a popular JS member who has made a live-action experience, but not here just yet. So this particular book contains the first 12 issues of this book. Now, if you're curious about this book, okay, so the previous book that this came out, it was some point in 90, I think it was like 90, I think it was released just, I think it was just after they released, after, I think it was just after the release of, I think just after Suicide Squad did. Okay, so this was released in 1992. And this went on for 5 years, 63 issues. It did publish one annual. You might be asking, is the annual in trade? The answer is no. No, it's not. Though this was technically the second ever trade to collect these issues, they did release a trade in 1983 called Crime and Punishments, and it was the only trade ever released for Spectre, released for about 20 years until the 2014 book started release. The first 22 out of 63 issues in trade, 62, those issues here, there's a reason why. As for why the remaining issues are in trade, I have no idea. Mostly put in this book, where this is basically, now, some of you may know about the fact that the Spectre has gone through 3 different hosts over the years. Those being Jim Corrigan, the guy who was the host the longest, and the current host in the current continuity, Hal Jordan, and Christmas Allen. Which was his book? Jim Corrigan, the original one. And this will also be the last volume to feature him as the titular Spectre, because he would give up the role by the end of the book and start a mini-series crossover that basically debuted the new character. The opening issue debuts 2 characters. We have Amy Birchman, who is sadly only around for the first year of the book before she gets killed off. Inspector Nate Kane, who... So, he is here for pretty much the entire run. Yeah, he only made 1 appearance outside this book. And that was issue of Batman. Yes. Yeah, and the issue he guest starred in. Fun fact about the issue is the first appearance of Vesper Fairchild. Those of you not familiar with this woman, this is the woman who Bruce Wayne was framed for the murder of. Yep. Yeah. We also have the Reaver, who is a serial killer in the book, and he's pretty much the main villain of the opening story of this book. He just skipped a couple issues, but he's pretty much just here, and he even guest stars issue 26. There's also Lewis Snipe, who is actually a character from the Jim Corrigan book from the more fun comics. Basically, a comic he made his debut in. He's from that comic, and he gets killed off in this book. He gets killed off in issue 1. It's like, I think that the reason why they decided to have this character die in the opening issue because it's a loose end from Jim Corrigan's past, so why not, basically. We also have Madame Xanadu pop in the book, which is probably a return of favor, given the fact that, well, he also appeared in her book, so why not? Yeah, and she was basically a recurring character in the previous one book, even this book too. Yeah, he tried to bring her in for this book as a recurring character. On a regular basis, not necessarily, but that's kind of what he did. Though I do appreciate the fact he featured Madame Xanadu in this very book. But it's like, basically, it's like, the book is known for being very gruesome. It's infamous for this. And the first arc is all about tracking down this one serial killer, who dies by the end of the story arc, by the way. Which takes the first year of the book. And it's just a really good book. I don't want to spoil too much about this book. This book is so good. Because Jonathan does an amazing job. He probably saw the Spectre like, hey, this guy's supposed to be the vengeance of God. Why don't he just kill people every issue? In graphic ways. And try to do as best he can without, well, ruining whatever basic work what DC was doing. Heck, like in issue 2, he battles a frickin' demon. Yes. Who was no enemy of his, who made his first appearance in Showcase 61, which was an issue that Jim Corrigan appeared in as basically a brief. It was a big child book. Yes. And here's the thing: the book takes place in New York City, not Gotham City, New York. And the whole thing is basically like deals with various different characters. We also have it where, in a flashback, we show off the fact that Jim Corrigan's killer, Gat Benson, got killed off in a flash. They show him flashback, though. Yeah, he actually got killed off in Secret Origins 15, which was he killed off in a story that features the Spectre. Yep. And I do appreciate the fact they explore his past over the course of these 12 issues. It's just a really good book. I find nothing bad here. Chris Voss has some really gruesome artwork, but just really good. I love the stuff they have here. They also in issue 3 debut a character named Matthew Taylor, who was a recurring character in the book up until basically for a lot of the book in his last appearance in issue 52. Yeah. But in the case of this book overall, I'm going to give the book roughly a 9 out of 10. It's just a really good book. Nothing really wrong with it per se. And, well, when I review Volume 2, oh, heck yes. Definitely. I am definitely planning on reviewing Volume 2 at some point. Just not at the moment. Okay, so that's be pretty much it particular review. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications, and do not hit the dislike button. Next up, it's open topics time. And then it's back to Magic Ranger. Okay? Next video. Bye.